How are we doing, everyone? Welcome to our second to last module, co-creation of value. Before we jump into the questions, let me do a little preamble here. As I mentioned in the first class, this is a course that I created a number of years ago. And at one point during the many iterations of this course, the class was actually called Co-Creation of Value. Therefore, I think this is a very important module. And that this was the final module in all of the series. Kind of like where I wanted us to end up at. I still think it's very, very important. It's not the final module anymore, and the course is not called this presently. But I personally think it's a really, really big deal. At some point when I was creating this course a number of years ago, I was pulling articles from various sources like Harvard Business Review and from Sloan Management Review and Journal of Marketing and some other locations. And there really wasn't what I wanted to see. So I was talking about this to Locander one day on a conference call, and he said, just write the damn article. So we wrote the article, which is why this article leads this packet. List, whatever you want to call it. Okay, let me jump into some questions. Solid questions this week. We're going to start off with Team Nadella. Would focus groups be a more effective means for CMOs to create a shared experience? Focus groups, and this theme here that we're talking about here, if we're looking for information from the crowd, in a previous world, the marketing function would do marketing research. Okay, that's what we would do. And marketing and marketers, I still believe that marketing research, both qualitative, such as focus groups, and quantitative, such as surveys, are a very, very useful set of tools. Now, in today's day and age, we just have more tools. Marketing research in general are not great at shared experiences. Focus groups can do shared experiences, but they tend to be on a smaller scale. Focus groups could be 3, 6, 8, 12 people at a time. Usually when we're talking about shared experience, we're talking about a large-scale shared experience. And in old school marketing, we would call that event marketing prior to having a digital options. Now we have digital options and we have events. And sometimes we have events with lots of digital as well. Also known as Coachella. There are potential risks or obstacles. Burning Man, there's another very large-scale shared experience with lots of digital related to it. Are there any potential risks or obstacles CMO must overcome when thinking customers as partners in the marketing efforts? Well, there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of obstacles. The main one is, how much do we how much of what we're hearing is absolute truth? Just because we are using a social media listening tool and we're monitoring Twitter and Facebook and we hear, 100 people talking about a specific thing, okay? Does that mean, okay, there's 100 people talking about this specific thing on Reddit, oh, we got to make this change? No. What I think you should use the social tools is the gathering of themes. And if a theme arises, you then test both through market research, through further social media listening, through conversations with customer groups and or executives, whether we are making this change. I mean, the biggest risk is thinking that what we're hearing from the crowd is absolute truth. And I don't think it's absolute truth. I think it's information you use to make better decisions. But we don't rely on it solely on the feed. Do you think the emergence of technology and social media will eliminate the need for the CMO as part of the C-suite? I sure hope not. Now, we've had a number of CMO questions here. I'm going to leave that. I really hope it does not, because I know more CMO questions are coming. I'm going to leave it at that because what I want to say is going to be answered in a couple questions further down. All right, Team Netflix CEO Hastings. The article suggests shifting your leadership style and undergoing a change in strategy, or that you may need, if you're going to change strategy, you may need to shift your leadership style. Okay? Given what we did in leadership prior to this module, you get that. Given what you saw in the case that you just turned in a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, you saw that. If the current style is working and productivity is high, why isn't it just as simple as refocusing on priorities and tasks? Let me see how I can answer this. If the current style is working, productivity is high. Well, working now and efficient now is good for you now. But if we turn the clock back and look at Microsoft in 2004, 2005, 2006, and even 2007, the current style was working. You know, if you look at their stock value and you look at their financial metrics, they were doing well, and productivity was high. It didn't set them up for what was going to happen in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, or 2013. By 2011, 12, 13, 14, Microsoft was crashing. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head exactly when Ballmer got ousted. But a lot of that was them not changing earlier. They waited too long until there was a crisis to have to force the change. You know, Microsoft is doing well now. They are more market-oriented now. I think Satya Nadella is doing a fantastic job in refocusing what Microsoft needs to be. Could bottom-up philosophies ever be so effective that they become job-threatening? As in the example within the text, Threadless, Chicago-based firm, does not have or need a design team. All right, this is a very interesting question, so I'm going to answer it in a couple different ways. First of all, the question is phrased in a top-down way. In a top-down way, yes, Threadless does threaten jobs that are design jobs. So let's pretend some other t-shirt company in Southern California that's 30 years old has 15 designers. If that company were to shift to a threadless model, those 15 designers may be out of a job. That is true. Now let's look at it in terms of a bottom-up model. Okay, that company in Southern California has 15 design jobs. Threadless, I'll make the number up because I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Let's pretend they have 20,000 designers. So in the bottom-up world, the popular press term for all this is the gig economy, right? Where you have, instead of a designer just working for one company, you have a designer working for multiple companies. Or you have a designer that's a designer on the side, but he or she has a full-time job during the day. Maybe she's a high school art teacher. So it depends on how you want to look at this. You know, you could look at it from a bottom-up perspective or a top-down perspective. The article references consumer input and opinions to aid in product creation. Yes? On my team, we struggle a lot with consumers saying they want one thing, but buying habits show us another. Where does one draw the line between customer-centric and following internal development pipeline? Well, I think this goes back to what I said earlier. I don't think you should take anything as absolute truth that is coming from the customers. I think you take it as a theme that you then explore further. You know, they want widget X. I want widget X. I want widget X. And maybe it actually is widget X that they actually need. But the only way to know if widget X is what they actually need is to then do some further testing, some further conversation, some further focus groups. And don't just say, oh, God, my customer keeps complaining about this. Let's fix it. My customer keeps complaining about this, and let's fix it. No. But you don't ignore the conversation, and you see where that conversation leads you to. Just don't take it literal. Take it as a theme to investigate. That's probably what you should write down in your notes. All right, Team Zuckerberg. Oh boy, did you have an interesting week, Mr. Zuckerberg. Whoa. Do I need to pull that up? Let's see if we can. Ari Code. Oh boy, did he stick his foot in his mouth here. Here's the full interview. We don't have to get into the whole thing. I personally find Holocaust denial deeply offensive, and I absolutely didn't intend to offend people. He wasn't trying. This is a very, very long story. I suggest it's interesting enough and big enough of a deal that you need to go investigate it. Okay. He wants to keep free speech on Facebook, which is good to keep free speech on Facebook. But he used a very poor example in trying to express his opinion, and he really stuck his foot in his mouth. Is there one characteristic in common with all organizational politics or policies? I don't know if this is all-encompassing or all, but most people want to protect themselves. You know, self-preservation, or protect my team, or protect my silo, or try to fight and gather for resources for me or my team, or that's kind of the root of all evil, I would say. You know, it's where companies can get themselves into trouble because you have someone taking care of themselves or their job or their team or their silo or their product line or their region. That is their goal first, and not the betterment of the firm or the company. I mean, to put this into perspective, and I used this example previously, I mean, the iPod used to be the profit driver for Apple. The iPod was really what broke Apple into the streak that it's having now. There is no senior VP or CMO for iPod. And we have seen since the iPhone, the iPod decrease in need and or use. If there was someone trying to fight for resources for iPod, Apple might be inefficiently pushing product out to the market that is no longer needed because we have iPhone. Right? What is the best way to get rid or lessen organizational politics? Kill all the silos. I don't like silos. Really don't like silos. You know? And then also have a culture or organization where you can talk without there being consequences. You know. Easier said than done. Sorry. Bezos. Team Bezos. Team Amazon. Amazon Prime Week. Does there ever become a time that a company gets too big to have community-based marketing and needs to move towards a more structured or an isolated model? Or does it just change a little? Well, see, we're looking at this from the company perspective, and usually what happens is that it's more from the brand or the product perspective. I mean, you look at Procter & Gamble, and they do little to no company marketing. It's all brand oriented. You look at Amazon, and Amazon does a little bit of company, but the majority of the advertising that Amazon does is product related. If you have product related, I don't care how big your company is, you can still do community based type efforts. You know? How can you quantify your leadership style? How do you quantify how your leadership style affects productivity? Ooh, that's an interesting question. So, in Microsoft's case that I said earlier, Ballmer, who was an Extreme X, by the way, prevented Microsoft from making changes in the marketplace. And they missed not one, not two, but like 3 major shifts. At some point, the board has to say, hey, buddy, you as a leader and how you behave as a leader is not being conducive to what's happening in the marketplace. How is the leader held accountable? I think that's really what this comes back to. And if we're talking about a CEO and we're talking about a publicly traded company, the CEO has to answer to the board. All right, Tim Cook and Apple. The role of the CMO is ever expanding and taking on new responsibilities. Is there a discussion of CMOs taking on aspects of the CIO, effectively becoming a chief marketing technologist? Do you see this same cross happening in other C-suite roles and creating wholly new ones or new roles? So, to be perfectly direct, the article that we will read next week is called The Chief Marketing Technologist. So, yes, there is this conversation happening. And we will talk more about this next week when you read that particular article. The other one that I see a lot is... Hold on, let me get it right. I see AIS a lot. Now, that's not an acronym in terms of like C-suite, with there being a C there, but it's accounting information systems. And that is a very, very, very big deal in the terms of the financial reporting and the financial flows of financial data coming into the firm. Big deal. Big deal. I mean, think of a company like Square, for instance. They need to have an AIS person very, very, very high up the food chain. Or the accounting function, the chief accounting officer, has to be an AIS person. All right, Google. Oh my God, did Google have a week? Did Google have a week? Where are we at, Google? We have a headline here. RE code. Where is it? Maybe the Zuckerberg thing already boosted it out. Google got fined $5 billion by the European Union for anti-competitive practices. Pretty much the same exact anti-competitive practices that Microsoft did in the 1990 antitrust case in the United States. And the ironic thing about that is Google was created as the company to be the anti-Microsoft. Their original motto of do no evil was literally a motto from engineer speak back in the day about, I can't work for Microsoft, they're evil. So it's a little bit of irony there. Sorry for the hiccup. Who are some notable CMOs in today's economy? Now, this is a loaded question. One, because I don't have that many off the top of my head. And two, I don't have that many off the top of my head because I don't know what it is about the tech companies, but very few of the tech companies have a CMO. Apple doesn't have a CMO. They have a senior VP, okay, who's very high up the food chain, but he's not a CMO. Most of the CMOs that I can think of are in the consumer products area. You'll find a CMO at McDonald's. You'll find a CMO at Procter & Gamble. You'll find a CMO at a lot of companies you'll see in the supermarkets and the Targets and the Walmarts and the CVSs of the world. You'll see very few of them in tech. Will we see an increase in incentives and rewards for companies to provide feedback to companies? For consumers? This is an interesting conversation. As a matter of fact, I just emailed an article to one of my colleagues, and there's this bubbling conversation that happens every so often that, okay, Facebook, you should be paying us, the users, because we provide all the traffic, we provide all the data that you monetize us on, so where's our cut? I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't. But what happens is the consumers get maybe not direct financial compensation, but they get other things. They get inside information. They get the good feeling of being part of supporting a company that they love. They get the intrinsic reward of, knowledge development. They get credibility within their community for being a beta tester. So there is a lot of indirect rewards as opposed to direct financial rewards for customers who provide feedback. You can Google reputation economy and you'll get a lot of stories revolving around reputation as a form of non-currency that's a really big deal. All right, end of the last article from Team IBM. In a typical top-down company, how can employees help instill a more bottom-up approach to marketing? How can lower-level marketers convince a traditional CMO, top-down CMO, to listen to its customers? Wow, this is a fantastic question. And the reason why it's a fantastic question is because this is probably one of the questions I get asked the most, including this week. This was Monday of this week, and this is what the question looked like. Hey, Dr. Dano, my name is Al Molina. I was in your direct marketing class last semester. Hopefully you still remember me. I was in class with a lot of baseball guys. The reason for this email is because I just started a job. I'm working for a contracting company. My boss is very old school and doesn't know a thing about marketing in general, let alone digital marketing. That's a multi-million-dollar business based solely on word of mouth. So the business is based on word of mouth, but yet it's still top-down. I'm working for him basically as an assistant. Whatever he needs me to do, I do. I was thinking about presenting him with a marketing proposal because I think the business would really benefit from it. I also think to be very impressed that I did this on my first and own took initiative. I wanted to bounce the idea after you. So he's asking this very same question. And my answer is always the same. Be the messenger. You should not have to persuade. You should not have to say that your idea is right or wrong. You should present the data and have the CMO and let she or he make the decision for themselves. So in other words, if someone is top down and they're in charge, they're not going to change. But if you present them with a steady stream of data that starts making sense, you get your SEO, SEM certificate. You get your Facebook's analytics unofficial certificate. You get a social media listening tool like Hootsuite certificate. And you start pulling the data and the conversations. And when you're in a meeting, someone says, I don't think that's a good idea. And you could say, well, it may or may not be a good idea, but I'll tell you that these customers are talking about it. And that's how you get the bottom-up conversation started when you're very, very low on the totem pole. Okay? All right. Article 2. Love Article 2. And the reason why I love Article 2 is Article 2 has one of those magic titles. The title to my article is really dull and boring. The title to this article is fantastic. I don't know if I've ever said it before in class, but my definition of marketing is find out what people want and give it to them. Well, if that's my definition of marketing, having a mentality of knowing what your customers want before they do, oh my gosh, this is like wonderful. And it fits perfectly in with market orientation, where we're constantly scanning both our customer bases and our competitor bases. Remember, we're out, we have an external orientation here, not an internal orientation. We're constantly searching and learning and probing and listening, and we have empathy to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. I think this article is fantastic. Let me make sure I'm covering all my things that I wanted to say here. As a matter of fact, somewhere in this article, the authors use the phrase, the holy grail of marketing. Knowing what your customers want before they do. It could be the holy grail of marketing. I don't think that's really hyperbole. I mean, this is the mentality that we've been talking about. You know, we can't get to this without having a CRM discussion and loyalty, right? We can't get to this without talking about crowd, community, and branding, right? You need the right leadership model to get to this point, because we know that X people, like Ballmer, didn't care what their customers wanted. They wanted to push what Microsoft sold, and sold well. All right. Questions, actually. From Team Nadella. For smaller businesses that have less resources to take on this analytical approach, how do they benefit from next best offer as well? First of all, these analytical tools, you know, they're starting to become widgets, and they're starting to become available. Both within Amazon Web Services, AWS, they're offering widgets. Both SaaS, SPSS, which is now owned by IBM, and IBM has an entire analytical thing going. And SaaS, I'm trying to remember who owns SaaS, but someone else owns SaaS. Okay, certainly within Salesforce, there are widgets that you can buy. This is becoming a more significant analytical approach, is being pushed down to smaller businesses. And when I say smaller businesses, I'm saying, you know, $15,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month. Small businesses can afford that. Okay, we don't have to talk about eBay level, Netflix level, Amazon level of analytics and next best offer. Can an MBO have more than one achievable objective at a time and still be effective? Absolutely. Absolutely, because you have different data and you have different customers. As a matter of fact, with a one-to-one mentality that we've been talking about, and using Amazon as an example, with, you know, make up the number, 55 million different customer bases, Amazon has 55 million different NBOs because they have a different one for each customer based on what that customer likes, behavior, history, etc. Well, you know, here's a perfect example. Surprise, surprise, Dr. Dano's holding a book, right? This book was printed in 1982. It wasn't printed in a whole lot of quantity. It actually came from the library of General Motors. I bought this used on Amazon. Okay, it was a long time ago, but I bought this used on Amazon. And I was looking for theory books in marketing. And this book was extremely hard to find. And Amazon NBO'd me for this thing. And I am still happy to this day that I have this book. It was almost $200, by the way, which is way too much. But I was so happy that I finally had a chance to purchase one. I didn't even think about it. Once a customer uses a particular channel multiple times, is it best to only use that channel for offers in the future as a way to cut costs? Or is it good to periodically test other channels in case a customer evolves? It's very good to periodically test other channels in case a customer evolves. Remember, especially when we're talking about digital channels and digital data collection, it's not very expensive to build another NBO, offer, channel, knowledge base, whatever you want to call it. You go where the customers go. You find out what they want and you give it to them where they want it and how they want it. All right, team Netflix. What is the best way a small family-owned business can do? Okay, answer this question. They only mention the legality briefly in the second to last paragraph, and it seems like this article has applied business terms to racial profiling and stereotyping. Is that where the legality of an MBO falls into a gray area? All right. There was a number of very good ethics questions here related to this article and the last article. So I'm going to start this conversation now, and I think the easiest way to talk about it is I have no problem with NBO. I have no problem with data collection. I have no problem with being proactive and offering customer solutions, provided that the company is transparent in how they operate, what they collect, and how they offer. I mean, perfect examples, neither Facebook nor Google are transparent at all with the data. Who they sell to, how they're targeting you. They didn't give you an option to opt in or opt out. You were in or you didn't get to play in that sandbox. So this idea of opting in versus opting out, which is basically the EU model, right, which I'm a fan of, I have no problem with people opting in if they get something in return, i.e. a lower cost cellular plan. I don't know, something like that. Or they get extra gigs of storage, or they get faster speed. I don't know. There's some kind of a trade-off. There's an opt-in reward system. But more than anything else, I care about transparency. And, U.S. companies are not very good about that. I mean, your credit card company barely keeps their self, once a year or twice a year, they're obligated to send you that in 3-point font, this thing that has no phone numbers or addresses on. We value your privacy. Yet they give it to you in a document that you couldn't read without a telescope. So, the targeting advertising snafu to pregnant women comes to mind where things could go awry with data mining and general lack of oversight. What other NBO advertising campaign can you provide that were unintentional consequences? So, for those who really want to see a funny take on this, it was Stephen Colbert and the Colbert Report before he went to CBS to take over David Letterman's spot. And just do Stephen Colbert, target, and pregnant teenager in YouTube, and this 4-minute skit will pop up, and you'll fall out of your chair. There's been other, if you want to call them snafus, or yes, unintended consequences. We've had older people targeted well. We've had non-married people or married people targeted well, or not well. They go. Yes, it's easy for us to overestimate this example here with Target. Okay, which, you hate to say it, it had unintended consequences, but the system was accurate. Even though the daughter and, the algorithm was correct. That's the funny part of this. Do next best offers tie into cookies? Yes and no. Yes, when they are related to companies whose business model relies on data collection via digital. Okay? Facebook doesn't call them cookies, they call them pixels. Cookies is the popular term. This is usually web-based type Google Analytics metrics things. But if we look at Target's decision to send a teenager, "Congratulations, you're pregnant" book was not based on cookies. It was based on purchase history. And there's really no need to buy neonatal vitamins unless you're really pregnant. There's, you need regular vitamins, but neonatal vitamins are really only people that are pregnant. So it depends on the business and whether it's complete. There are businesses that are web-based that, they need a lot of cookie data. But there are other businesses that it's more transaction-based. And then you have a company like Amazon that does both. All right, Team Zuckerberg. If companies are using algorithms, here's another great example. Unintended consequences, because we're talking about Facebook. So Facebook was trying to remove all possible porn or nudity off of the site as much as they possibly could. And there was a journalist who had a decent-sized community, and there's a very famous war photo from Vietnam that after a napalm type thing, that this one girl comes running out of the scene. It's a young girl. She's 9, 10, 11, or 12. All her clothes get burned off, so therefore she's naked coming out of the scene. Now, this is a news article, and the algorithm from Facebook flagged this as child porn and pulled it off the site. And the community went bananas because Facebook had an intended, yes, this is what we want to do. We want to get rid of child porn, and we want to get rid of porn in general. But, this was an interesting area where is this news? Is this art? Is this, it was a whole nother thing. Okay, back to this. You can look that up, by the way. Companies are using algorithms to generate the next best offer. How can a company guarantee that the same offer isn't repeated? Well, that could be part of the algorithm. That's what these algorithms do. Bad algorithms repeat the same offer. Sometimes they want to repeat the offer. It isn't bad to repeat an offer. If maybe you don't buy the first time. Like next week, I'm going to go see Bayern play Juventus in Philadelphia. Big soccer fans in the house. Neither one of those are my two big teams. So when the first came out, I wasn't interested, but I kept getting offers and offers. Eventually, the prices got to a point where it's like, hey, this is no big deal. I'm going to take my kids now. Say a customer fills a shopping cart online, but does not complete the purchase. Should the next best offer be a reminder to pick up where they left off, or there need to be... There's many times where we get reminders, shopping cart nudges. eBay does it. I'm almost sure Amazon does it as well. Sometimes there's a discount. A lot of times it's a reminder without a discount. All right, speaking of Amazon, Team Bezos, where does customer data collection become unethical? I'm going to repeat what I said earlier because I think it's very important, but it revolves around transparency, and it revolves around opting in versus opting out. I think I could summarize lots of ethical conversations in data collection around those two topics. What do you think will be the newest type of data set to be mined in the next few years? It's got to be revolving around AR or VR. We're already starting to see emoji type data mining. Probably voice would be a really cool one, because voice is not something that's data mined at the moment. We're just starting to do images pretty well, so that's not in the next few years because it's already happening. Video, think about, like, we can search for things within a Google search engine, okay, because Google searches text really well. Google does not search video well or audio well. So if you want to know, I don't know how many times Robert Plant said Stairway to Heaven, and you try to do that search on YouTube, all you're going to get is the sub metadata if the song was mentioned or the title of Stairway to Heaven. But anything that happens within that video, that's non-searchable. All right, Team Apple, who doesn't want to build a search engine. We talk and read about customers driving our marketing efforts and innovation. Volvo was an example in the article that I wrote. So for next best offers to become more effective, why don't companies allow each customer to individually decide how they want to receive offers? Some already do. Yes, they do. But in the article, we discuss best channels to deliver offers, but should we allow customers to decide how they want to receive it? And they do. They do. We can do it app-based. We can do it email-based. We can do it loyalty card-based. Or all three at the same time, depending on which channel you are using at the given moment. I think the article made a bigger deal about this than we really need to get into. The fact that you guys are actually on this topic, I'm cool with. But really, the next best offer mentality is what I want from you guys. Because I'm telling you right now, when you go back to work, no one at work that you're working with now is thinking about MBO. And they should. The article mentions the legal and ethical dilemmas related to NBO as they existed in 2011. Obviously, there's consumer risk and worries in 2018, many of which have been realized. Can companies still follow the outlines for NBO strategy effectively, or rather should it? Yes, they can. They can. They can. I have no problem with NBO, providing that they are transparent, providing that we opt in and we know, and that we're more partners as opposed to being not victims, but being used without our knowledge. All right, Team Google, speaking of, why is it that consumers enjoy Amazon? Because all of the products it offers, we feel overwhelmed in the process of buying us online. Amazon is just really, really, really good. Okay, so let's talk about that for a couple seconds. If we turn back the clock to 1995, 96, and 97, you guys do not remember this because you're too young. But everybody was very, very afraid of using hold on, I should have paused, but I didn't do it. So I'm going to let it run and I'll entertain you. These things on the internet. Credit cards. You know, we love going to the internet for information, but so many people did not trust putting their credit card online. And Amazon, their user interface, the UI, they made consumers feel confident in the buying process. In the and even today's day and age, you guys go to Amazon and think about how easy it is to check out in Amazon. And then you go and buy uniforms for your kids for their local soccer team using some badass, ugly, nasty UI. And you don't even know, there was no confirmation. It was just you got a terrible feeling out of the, am I really buying it? Did the transaction happen? Consumers enjoy Amazon initially, and it's because the buying process is really simple, easy. You feel good about it. It's confident. It's secure. You trust. That's where it all begins. And then on top of that, Amazon might be the best algorithm company out there. Even if they're not the best, they're one of the top 5 in the world. So their MBO is really, really, really good. Really good. And on top of that, they have probably some of the best selection and some of the best prices you can find. So Amazon's dangerous, man. If you're in the retail business and you got to compete against them, I wish you luck. Some of you are reading The Everything Store. This is a very good book. And if you're not reading it now, when this class gets over at the end of this month, we're less than a week and a half away. This is your August book you should read. Really good. The Everything Store. Jeff Bezos and the Age of Amazon. Which channels are operative in successfully displaying the next best deal? All right, we already had channels discussions. Is it unavoidable that companies have wrong results from the information they've collected? It's given the amount of data that's collected, yes, there's always error. There's always error. What if the results from the analysts are wrong? Well, good algorithms don't rely on a single source of data. Good algorithms use multiple sources of data, and good algorithms also test the data before the NBOs get offered. You know, we already kind of got into that a little bit too. How companies improve those results from the MBO strategies by lessons they have. How do companies improve their results of their MBO strategies by the lessons they have learned? Well, you know, if you look at Amazon, or if you look at eBay, or if you look at a lot of algorithm companies out there, if they see an increase in behavior, therefore the NBO was a good one, and then they will take that and go forward. This isn't exactly NBO, but let me just give you metaphorically what we're talking about here. At any given time, there are 30 or 40 different Facebooks out there. I don't think I told you this story or not, but maybe I did. So the engineers at Facebook, right, run experiments, and they run them with actual users. And they'll take, you know, small tests, 10,000 users, 15,000 users, 40,000 users, and they will try a new feature for a month or two with this small set of users. They will then see and compare the A group versus a B group that doesn't have it, and see if there is a difference in behavior. And if there is a significant difference, then the engineer will make the case that this is a really big deal, and we think we should roll this out to all Facebook users, and then they do. That's the way NBO kind of works too when we get down to deals. All right, finally, I love this title as well. Because this is the idea of what market-oriented firms do. They need knowledge. They are always searching for knowledge. They're searching for it in the marketplace. They're searching for it amongst their customers, their competitors. They are externally oriented, and they use this information to bring it in to make changes so they can have a more sustainable competitive advantage over time. Love this article. Good article. All right, Team Microsoft. Can customer behavior be modeled from data, the insights engine? How can it can? Yes, it can. That's the whole idea. I'm kind of not sure what we're asking here. But you use the data to create a model, whether you want to call it a model, whether you want to call it an algorithm. We're all talking about the same exact thing here. Which characteristics are most vital to the success of insight engines? Operational or people characteristics? It's not an either or. As a matter of fact, some of you are reading Jim Collins' Good to Great. And those great companies are not or companies, they're and companies. You need the correct people characteristics. They need to want to learn. They need to be more why. They need to be open, effective communication skills, not protecting turf. Operational, no silos. The idea of the data collection infrastructure, all of it. All right, do you believe in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Kidding, having fun here. You guys are like already X number of minutes into this video. Do you believe that the CMI, Unilever, and data-driven marketing teams that created individualized marketing campaigns are only beneficial to the company's bottom line, or they actually provide value to the customer? they have to provide value to the customer, because then if they don't provide value, the customer are going to ignore these campaigns and they're not going to buy, which therefore will impact the bottom line. I think about this from a salesperson's perspective. Sure, salespeople work on commission, and I have no problem with salespeople working on commission. I don't think they should work on 100% commission. That's another conversation. But the way I look at it, a salesperson's commission is their reward for doing a good job. It's their reward for providing value and helping someone out. If you help someone out and they are actually better off than they were before you guys met up, I don't have a problem with you earning a commission on that. But that only comes after the fact. And the bottom line comes after the fact of providing value to the customer. How do you think the increased demand for STEM backgrounds in business will influence the traditional business school, if at all? Well, we're having these conversations now, right? And the scientific method really isn't highly involved in business schools until you get to the master's or PhD level. But we're going to start seeing, and we're going to start seeing it in Stillman within the very, very, very near future. We already have it now in the supply chain, and we have a couple other electives that KV teaches. But we're going to start seeing more analytics classes, and whether, in the business school, and that type of thinking, and that type of offering. You need the math. It could be technology. That's what we're talking about. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening because it's happening in the marketplace. At my current job, marketing and CMI all report up to the same director. This model is becoming a standard now across our company globally. I've seen this shift take place at other companies as well. Has this trend hit other sectors outside of consumer packaged goods? It hasn't hit the tech sector. I'm going through companies off the top of my head, and they really don't even have good marketing departments. If you think of Twitter, they really don't have a pure marketing department. Facebook just did one of their first, they do very, very little traditional advertising, or advertising at all. Think of a Dropbox. These companies are not built around having a chief marketing officer and a marketing department. So it's more standard within consumer product goods, and as I said earlier, in the supermarkets and the Targets, Walmarts, CVS's of the world. All right, Team Zuckerberg. How can current large companies go about evaluating whether their insights team is operating in a manner that is independent, collaborative, and forward-thinking? Is the insights team self-serving? Can you think about the insights team, and are they being beneficial to the entire firm as a whole? Or are their insights recommendations only for particular sectors, and those particular sectors might actually benefit them the most? That's where you look at to see whether it's independent and collaborative. I feel that most large companies have an overabundance of data analysis and information. However, it seems that it's completely useless and that there's someone to make sense of it all. Okay? Do you feel this is a recurring issue in large companies? Absolutely. So, the collecting the data is not the problem. And we're at a point, actually, there's too much data. It's making sense and useful, tactical, strategic knowledge from information. Okay? Those skill sets are very, very hard to find. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now, too, that very few business schools actually teach that. It's another conversation. Do companies run the risk of data breach by allowing any employee to access documents to gain insights on customers? It could. Usually when we talk about data breaches, we're talking about hackers. But we could have employee espionage. As a matter of fact, we just had a monster case of this over at Tesla within the last 2 weeks on the high side. I think we also just had a monster... Oh, we had an even bigger one with Apple less than a week ago. Let me hit pause and I'm going to find it for you. So, this is a blog I pay attention to. Kara Swisher interviews Mark Zuckerberg from a 90-minute podcast interview. And here's the... Zuckerberg is so wrong here. It's hard not to impugn the pen of the whole, Sandy Hook deniers. I told you he really stuck his foot in his mouth. This is European Union, Google fines. Oh, here's a good one. Amazon continues to profit from the sale of white supremacist propaganda. Okay. Now, Amazon has third-party vendors sell stuff on Amazon's platform. And Amazon likes transactions. Amazon does not do a good job completely monitoring what's being sold on their site, unfortunately. And there are opioids, and there is white supremacy stuff. eBay has issues here on these topics as well, as they try to algorithmically remove it. Here's Uber. Got a lot of ethics stuff happening here. So, Uber internally... Bozoma St. John just left Uber. She's really a rock star. This is a very sad story, unfortunately, but she ended up... She left Apple to go to Uber to try to fix Uber. Was there for a year. Their culture was so bad that she didn't last quite a year, and now she has an even better job. I thought I had this very easily. Okay, here it is. Former Apple employee charged with theft of trade secrets related to autonomous car project. So the employee visited the campus on the evening of Saturday, April 25th, entering both Apple's autonomous vehicle software and hardware labs, which coincided with the data download times, and he left with a box of hardware. I know it took a long time to get to answering the specific questions, but yeah, absolutely. What kind of negative implications could rise in a company if they were to try to change old mindset of insights and incorporate the new customer-centric strategies of it? What negative implications? Well, what happens is maybe the old mindset of marketing research and data collection was a very rigorous process, and then they switched to listening to what people are saying on Twitter, and it's the raw feed from Twitter is not a very good insight engine. There needs to be analytics on top of the raw feed from Twitter. We kind of had this conversation a little bit. Should there need to be a big change in personnel? I don't think there needs to be a big change in personnel. There just needs to be a big change in mindset. There might be some new skill sets gained by the personnel. Like particularly using a Hootsuite, using a Radiant 6, using a Social Mention, using a Brand 24, using a, Sprinkler. These are all software packages that have a new skill set for gleaming insights. What was the other one? Trax is another, TRACX is another really good software package. Why would Unilever share these insights? Isn't this giving away trade secrets? It's very likely their competition is doing something similar, but give them potentially new helpful tools. Unilever had to make themselves to look good in the press, so that's one of the reasons why they're giving away the insights. They're also giving away insights on a very, very high level without providing any of the details that are more specific, so it's harder for competitors to act on those. And plus, they're probably also giving away insights that are dated. Because in today's day and age and the velocity which things change, guess what? Something that we found out about 18 months ago, you can tell that story, but the actual information isn't as relevant as it was 18 months ago. Should all employees have to attend workshops to help them think outside the box in terms of ideas and problem solving? I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it at all. Whether companies do that, it's really up to them. It's not just in terms of ideas and problem solving. It's in terms of thinking analytically. I'm fortunate to have a PhD. I'm fortunate to have a level of rigorous analysis that was ingrained in me that really, it's hard to get it any other way than years and years of training and coaching. However, I probably could train people to identify things to then push up for someone who has higher level skill sets. Earlier, we talked about STEM getting into the company, and we're seeing more companies. It's funny. It's not actually STEM, but we're seeing more anthropologists and sociologists. This article at the end started talking about storytelling. All right. Let me pause for a second. Actually, I never hit pause, did I? I didn't, because I have a better idea what I'm going to do. I think storytelling is a very big deal. Oh, by the way, if we're looking at my bookshelf, let's look at all these analytics stuff. If you can see that, Quantitative Handbook of Search, Measuring Marketing. Roberto Clemente's in there. Some Sheryl Sandberg, Naturalistic Inquiry. Over here, Design, Measure It, Multivariate Analysis, Rigorous Statistics, Multivariate Statistics, Surveys, Methods of Meta-Analysis, Psychometric Theory. There's more down here as well. But over here is all my storytelling stuff. You can see some of this. I think storytelling is a really, really, really big deal. Some down here, Joseph Campbell. I have more storytelling stuff all over the place, to the point where I'm even getting into stuff like this, the brain, because all the storytelling stuff happens here. This, by the way, is spectacular. You should, instead of reading the book, get the DVD set and watch it, because it was a PBS series. Really fantastic stuff. I think storytelling is very, very, very invested. And now I am going to hit pause. So, although there are multiple storytelling books out there that I would recommend, and if you look at the list I sent you, actually there's a bunch in there. But this one right here, if there's only one I'm going to recommend with getting to this, should companies attend all workshops? This is where we would start. Houston, we have a narrative by Randy Olson. This guy's got a PhD. This guy was an oceanographer, actually, and got tired of how academics, and therefore companies, were telling their stories. They weren't being persuasive. And this is a way to be persuasive. This is a fantastic book. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Recommend it, recommend it, recommend it, recommend it, recommend it. Okay. Let's wrap up here. Some pioneers that utilize... Who are some of the pioneers who use some of these Superior Insight engines? We've mentioned them already a million times. Often companies developing an insights engines involve substantial investment, both because of the cost of recruiting high school employees and the cost of technology. How can smaller companies offset this cost? We did this one already too. Okay. We are good. We are good. We're good. Sorry this was a long module. It's kind of cool, kind of different. Please email me any questions. Gracias. Out.